Good evening. My name's Rob Pollard. In this video, we're going to cover the next development milestone, which is giving the units the ability to detect the terrain they're in and to have that terrain affect their movement. There's still more coding to go into this, in that I need to add additional code to take into account some more of the formation characteristics and also some of the equipment characteristics as well. But the majority of the code for terrain detection is now in, and I'll demonstrate some of its features. Let's run up Ancient Armies. Here we go. Pick a scenario. We're going to pick the terrain effects scenario. Okay, we're going to turn off line of sight because we want to see everything. So no line of sight. Okay, let that load. Right, here we go. So as I say, it's a bit of a milestone because prior to this, the units had no idea what terrain they were on, whereas now they do, and you'll be able to see that terrain impact them. The first thing I want to demonstrate is what happens to a unit if it runs into terrain it can't cross. Now this is a solid wall surrounding Pseudopolis, and we're going to run this cavalry unit into the wall. Now in later iterations of the game there will be some AI in this, and it will know if you're doing anything silly like this, and it will try and prevent you. Right, so here we are. We've given this cavalry unit a number of fast charges. It's going to come down here, it's going to rotate, and it should rotate into this wall and then carry on down there. And we're now going to see how the system deals with this. Let's hit play. So it's charging down. Now gets the rotation point and stop. So the first thing the system does now, if a unit encounters terrain that it can't cross, it actually cancels that order and it cancels all subsequent orders. And the reason why it does that is if you have to cancel your current order, then none of the subsequent ones will make sense. It's also quite switched on in that you can't actually see it from the distance you're at, but the system will bounce the unit back off the wall, and the reason for that is if I left the unit embedded in the wall, it would be stuck forever because the map would be coming back saying this unit can't move, it's on a wall. So it's amazing the subtleties you have to deal with in coding this. So that's the first thing, and that obviously detected, that cavalry unit detected that wall. That's something it can never do before. Let's take a look at a string crossing. We've got two Roman maniples here. We're going to get them to cross this stream. Let's do a little move forward. Let's see how these two units deal with the string crossing. Here we go. You should see them slow down when he gets to actually cross the stream. Now that one stopped. Now this one here, there he is, he's starting to slow down now. Now the reason why this one stopped is in Ancient Armies you can define the depth of your stream. Now the stream in this area is about 6 meters deep, way too high for an infantry unit to cross, hence why this unit here stopped. We can't move across it. Whereas here, I've actually called it Sandy Ford. It's about 1 meter deep in this area, which is easily crossable by infantry. So right away we can see the effects of the stream on these units, where if it's too deep it can't cross, if it's shallow enough it will cross. And the system will take into account such things as, for instance, cavalry can generally cross deeper streams. So it takes all that kind of stuff into account. In the full game, if a fording point isn't marked like this, you're actually going to have to send reconnaissance units out to try and find the fording points, which might not be in the same place every time, depending on how you set the map up. Okay, let's go for another example of terrain. Here we've got a hill. We've got two Macedonian phalangite units that are both we're going to send them both up the hill. Now, this route here starts off quite shallow and gets steeper as it gets towards the peak. And this route here is quite a shallow approach, although a little bit longer. So let's see what happens when we send both these units out. We'll get them to charge. Now, the system is coded to modify these units' fatigue ratings, cohesion, a whole bunch of other things when they move. But those parts haven't been made active yet because I need to play balance those. But in terms of taking unit density into account, unit cohesion into account to calculate speed, it does all that. Right, now you've got two Macedonian units. They're both going to pop up this hill, and what we should see is this unit here should slow down a tiny little bit, but not too much here. You probably won't even notice it on this part here because it's quite a shallow slope. But when he gets to here where it starts to steepen up, you'll see him slow down quite considerably. Whereas this unit here, because he's on a nice shallow slope, you should see a nice continuous climb. So let's hit the play button and see how they get on. See, that slope's not really affected his speed. So he should start slowing down a lot more once the hill starts steepening up. And he's already slowing down now. Right, so that's one turn. Let's hit the next turn. So he's a lot slower than this one because of the steepness of the hill. Look how slow he is now. He's really struggling now on that last steep bit. And he's got over the lip, it's flattened out, he's speeded up again. So, in terms of hills, Ancient Armies will actually calculate how steep a hill is by looking at the contour spacing. And different types of units have the ability to climb different steepnesses of hill, and different kinds of units are affected by the hill, some units more than others. In terms of going downhill, the system, you can get a speed bonus going downhill provided that your unit has a fairly low cohesion. If it's a very cohesive formation, i.e. one that is tightly packed like a phalanx, its bonus going downhill isn't so big. In fact, it's quite small because the men are concentrating on keeping their line as opposed to just running down the hill. Whereas an open unit will actually pick out some quite large speed bonuses when running down a hill. So that's hills there. A lot of good modelling there. Let's have a look at something else. Now here we have three units about to enter the forest. Now, if you look bottom left, down here, you can see what my mouse is over. Currently it's over Ley Woods. Now if I move the mouse cursor further in, if you look bottom left there, it's changed to Ley Woods Dense, and what it is, I've set up a two-stage forest here. The edge of the forest is pretty standard forest type forest, I guess, but inside here I've set up a much denser forest, one with a lot tighter wood density. Now in terms of line of sight, had we had that activated, it would be a lot more difficult to see things here, but what you're also going to find is that the density of the woods will affect how these units move. And the other thing that will affect how these units move is the density of the formations. That the more open a formation, the easier that formation will find it to walk through a wood. And this Roman formation has about twice the gap width between the men as does the Macedonian formation. I think the Macedonian formation, the gap between each man is just under a metre, whereas the gaps between each man in the Roman maniple is almost 2 meters. So big difference in the gaps between the people. And what you'll find is because the Roman unit is a much more open unit, it should be able to advance faster through the tree line. And again, the system takes cohesion into account. So if you have a low cohesive unit javelin, like javelin troops, they'll be able to run through this quite easily. Right, let's go and set these units to run through the woods, and we can see the effects. What I do, because infantry units move quite slowly, I put the time compression up to ×5 to speed things on a little bit. Right, let's set them going. So obviously the cavalry has a bit of a head start because it's fast. Let's hit the wood line so it's slowed down. Remember, this is at ×5 speed. Now these two infantry units are at the same speed at the moment, but note, once they get in the forest, the Roman hasty is pulling away faster than the Macedonian phalanx, and that's because its more open formation is more suited to going through the wood line. And also the Roman hasty will be taking a lot less damage in terms of cohesion compared with the phalanx. Now, something interesting has happened here. The cavalry unit's given up. He was due to drive itself down here, but he stopped. The reason why is the dense part of the woods, which it's just reached, is too dense for that cavalry unit, and it can't physically go through it. So let's see how the other two units deal with this once they get to the denser part. And note, at this point, these two infantry units are kind of going at the same speed, and the reason why is the hasty unit is going through a lot denser forest than the Macedonian phalanx, and although it's a more open formation, it kind of evens itself out. So let's hit play again. And again, we want to see what the Macedonians do when they hit the more dense part of the wood. There you go. Now the Macedonian phalanx has got to the more dense part of the wood, and it's decided it can't proceed any further because the wood density, the trees are so close together, the phalanx formation cannot physically penetrate it, whereas the Roman hasty formation has enough width between the men to be able to get through the woods. So, I mean, this is a fairly complex example, but it does show how the terrain interacts with the units and how all the various characteristics of the unit's formations, like the gaps between the men and also the amount of cohesion it has a big bearing on speed. Now, in terms of what's left to do, I need to model the effect of equipment weight on units. If they're carrying more gear, then generally speaking they're going to be slower. And I also need to enable the code that fatigues the units and applies cohesion damage when they're moving through broken terrain. And you'll find, generally speaking, the denser your unit, the more cohesion damage it will take when it's going through this type of terrain. So that's it for this video. I say it is a bit of a milestone because this is the first time the units themselves have been aware of their surroundings, as it were. So that's it for this one. See you next week. Goodbye. Thank you.